right, well, welcome everyone. Today we have Victoria Lipscomb with us, and she is a financial, what do you call yourself, Victoria? Financial coordinator? Financial literacy coordinator
Yes.
in student business services. And so she's here to help us with a workshop on living in Santa Cruz on a grad student stipend. So, Victoria, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Lisa. So as Lisa said, my name is Victoria Lipscomb. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the financial literacy coordinator here on campus. So what that means is that I help run the Slug Sense Financial Literacy Program, which I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. We're going to talk about a lot today, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And as you can tell, we're going to talk about budgeting, financial tips, resources for you, and other information that's going to be important for you to know here in Santa Cruz. So next slide, please. So first, let's start with a land acknowledgement. So the land on which we gather is the unceded territory of the Waswa-speaking Yupi tribe, the Amamutsun tribal band, comprised of the descendants of indigenous people taken to Mission Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during Spanish colonization of the Central Coast, is today working hard to restore traditional stewardship practices on these lands and heal from historical trauma. Next slide, please. So there's going to be a lot of expenses for you to cover while you're in school. We're going to talk about these first, and then we're going to talk about ways to pay for them. So some expenses at UCSC that you're going to have to think about, specifically first, the cost of school. Now, registration and tuition fees run about $35,000 a year, and that includes your waivable graduate student health insurance fee, books and supplies estimate, computer estimate, and program fees. You're also going to have to pay for housing. Now, we do have on-campus housing for some of our grad students, which can be included in your UCSC bill, and then there's no outside housing cost. If you live on campus, that covers all of your utilities. You don't have to think about another payment outside of that one UCSC bill. If you choose to live off campus, you will have to pay for rent, which normally in Santa Cruz runs about $1,000 to $1,500. Maybe you can find something cheaper, but that's about normal right now. And then you may also have to pay for utilities, which could be $100 or $200 a month. You'll have to think about parking, and you'll have to think about transportation to and from campus. Now, parking and transportation are that's a big deal in Santa Cruz because we do have very limited parking on campus. Many students are able to get a parking pass if you live off campus, but it can be kind of competitive. And that does run about $500 a year for the parking pass. And if you live off campus, your apartment complex or the area where you live may also charge you an additional amount for parking, normally between $20 and $100 a month. If you decide not to bring a car, you do have a free bus pass to get around campus in Santa Cruz, but you could also use other methods of transportation that may cost some money, including owning a bicycle or renting a car if you only need occasional trips. Now, you also have to think about your food. So if you live on campus or even if you live off campus, you can get a campus meal plan. Now this can cover all of your meals, and then again, you will have no outside costs for food if you so choose to do so. We do have a 7-day plan and a 5-day meal plan if you don't want all of your meals from the dining halls. Now you don't have to get a meal plan depending on where you live. So in that case, you would need to pay for groceries. In most cases, students spend around $60 a week, maybe a little less on their groceries. And then you also will have to think about bag costs. In Santa Cruz, we do charge a few cents per bag. And then there's also the cost of cooking utensils and appliances. If you're just moving into a new apartment, you may have to get new cooking utensils, and that can be a big startup cost, maybe $100 or $200, depending on the quality of cookware that you buy. Now, while you're in Santa Cruz, there's a lot to do. So you're going to want to pay for some entertainment. That could be restaurants, concerts. We have events all the time throughout the year here, different festivals. And depending on what you like to do, that is a big part of your expenses to think about. And then of course, you're going to always have personal expenses, hygiene products, toiletries. If you have any medicine or health products, you'll probably want to buy clothing throughout your time here, and you may have other small bills like a cell phone bill. And then of course, you probably are going to want to travel home at some point, and that's a cost to think about as well. Next slide, please. So as a graduate student, UCSC offers you multiple opportunities to work as a researcher or a teaching assistant. Both researchers, which are called GSRs, and TAs get paid once per month, and payment dates for the fall quarter start November 1st. Now, as a GSR or TA, you can work a maximum of 20 hours a week, which is called working half-time or at 50%. Working 20 hours a week as a TA would give you about $2,583 a month, and GSR salaries range from $1,823 a month to $3,593 per month. Now, the salary listed in your financial support offer is the total salary for the number of quarters listed, which will be paid to you through campus payroll. So when you get that salary in your financial support offer, you will have to divide that by the amount of months over the total quarters, which for most grad students is 9 total. And then that will give you your monthly salary amount. Now, I did say that GSR salaries start at $1,823. However, this year, the Chancellor's Office at UCSC has promised all grad students, no matter what appointment type you have, are going to receive a salary equal to or greater than that TA salary, meaning your salary should start at $2,583. Now, taxes are going to be taken out of the salary before you receive it, and I will show an example of that when we get to budgeting. Oh, did I skip a slide? Or I'm sorry. Can you go back a slide? Sorry. Okay, that was I just spoke on. Sorry, it looks like we got ahead on accident. So now we can go to the next slide. There we go. Perfect. Oh, go back one. Sorry. Just want to make sure we're in the right order. Okay, there we go. So now let's talk about the different dates in your tuition remission. So most university fees are going to be paid on your behalf as a GSR and TA, and they're going to be paid on the terms in which you have been hired, and that is going to be reflected separately in your financial support offer, and this is called tuition remission. Now, if you are a GSR, your tuition remission includes all of your fees and tuition, and that includes your non-resident supplemental tuition. Now, if you are a TA, tuition remission does not include the local campus fees, which this year is about $412 a quarter. And it normally does not include non-resident supplemental tuition, although some departments, depending on where you're working, they may pay that non-resident supplemental tuition on your behalf. If you do have a fellowship, that is paid through financial aid and student business services at the beginning of the quarter, and taxes do get taken out, but it does come separately from your salary. And any overage in that aid that is refundable is going to be sent to you directly. Next slide, please. Now, if you have to pay for your own non-resident tuition or other costs like housing on campus, you do have options to break down your quarterly UCSC bill, and you can break it down into monthly payments. So Student Business Services offers a payment plan to pay for tuition and registration fees, and that portal to fill out the application opens once per quarter. There is a $25 fee per quarter, or if you decide to do a year-long plan, that will be a $60 fee starting in the fall. Housing also offers their own payment plan, and they do give you the upfront option to choose monthly payments instead of quarterly payments. However, if something has happened and that is still too much for you, you can talk to housing, and they do have other payment plan options. If you are using the Student Business Services Tuition Payment Plan, which is called the TDPP, to pay your registration fees until your financial aid arrives or your salary arrives, you are going to be responsible for making payments by the posted due dates. If you are interested in the TDPP for this year, the winter quarter application opens on November 18th. So it opens in a little bit over a month. Next slide, please. Now, there are a few other campus resources to pay for your university costs if you're unable to pay. Graduate students this year are offered 2 programs to pay for housing. One program supports students who are returning to in-person activities in Santa Cruz, and this offers eligible students $1,500. If you are eligible for this program, you will be contacted directly on how to apply for it. The second program is a new student relocation supplement. The grad division is offering $1,000 for students who are relocating to Santa Cruz. You can apply for this within your My UCSC portal by going to your to-do list and applying through the student relocation supplement that should be located in your to-do list. Now, we also have a program on campus called Slug Support. Slug Support helps students with emergent situations. So if you're having trouble paying your bills, you need food or other basic needs, or if you're in a crisis, Slug Support is there to help, and they can provide funding for any gaps in your budget. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to switch gears just a little bit and talk about some tipping culture. So in many countries, service employees are paid a living wage within their salary. So a tip is not normal or considered mandatory. The tip is already included in the bill when you pay for food. However, this is not the case in the United States. In the United States, you are expected to tip service employees on top of the bill that they give you. So tips are normally based on a percentage of the bill. Usually a 15 to 20% tip is recommended. Now you can always tip more if you'd like to show extra appreciation, especially during the pandemic when many of these service workers are having to deal with the pandemic on top of their work. It has been common to tip a little bit more than 20%. Now, for example, some service employees that you may be expected to tip, well, you are expected to tip are wait staff and bartenders. They normally get paid around $3 an hour when a living wage is at least $15 an hour. So tip is very important. There's also beauty salon employees. So when you get your hair cut or if you get any other services like that. Rideshare drivers, if you use Uber or Lyft or any of those services. Delivery drivers, if they're doing delivery specifically for you, for example, groceries or restaurant delivery, if you use the Grubhub app, that sort of thing. If you ever buy any art from an artist, those are all employees that live off of tips, and it can possibly be their only income depending on how they work. Next slide, please. Now, there are some service employees that you are not expected to tip, and this is where it can get complicated. So first, you do not have to tip public service employees. So this is bus drivers and postal service employees. These people work for the government or other companies where they are paid a living wage. Also, fast food or self-service employees do not normally expect tips. So this would be McDonald's or Subway or any other fast food restaurant of that sort. Grocery store employees or employees of non-service businesses also do not expect tips and do not rely on them. Now, there are also some situations where you aren't expected to tip, but it is nice to do so. Now, people like baristas or wait staff when you order food to go, if you buy a car in the area and you have a salesperson that you've worked with, hotel staff who clean your rooms, those people normally do get paid a living wage. However, sometimes they may be underpaid, so it can always be nice to show appreciation, but it isn't required. Now, this can be very complicated, so if you aren't sure whether or not to tip, just ask. Most people here are not going to be offended if you ask if they are paid a living wage or if it is normal to tip for their services. It is better to ask and tip appropriately than to not ask and accidentally take away somebody's income or accidentally offend them. Next slide, please. So in Santa Cruz, you also are going to have to think about sales tax. This is another prevalent difference between the US and other countries. We handle sales tax differently in that in other countries, the sales tax is normally included in the written purchase price of the items. However, here, it's not normally included. If an item is advertised as costing $5, you may have to pay, or you normally should have to pay another 9.25% of taxes on top of that. Now, sales tax across the United States differs within different cities and different states. Here in Santa Cruz, that sales tax is 9.25%. Sales tax is added to almost all of your everyday purchases, including entertainment purchases like dining out at a restaurant. However, if you're getting groceries, most food is exempt from sales tax. Also, prescription medicine is exempt. Another thing to note is beverages have their own separate charge called a CRV charge, and that can be 5 to 10 cents depending on the amount of beverage that you're buying. So if you like to buy soda like Coke, Coca-Cola, that will have its own charge separate from other groceries and sales tax. Next slide, please. So while you are a grad student at Santa Cruz, you will also have to think about your income taxes. Now, there is no minimum dollar amount of income that triggers a filing requirement for a non-resident non-citizen, and this includes foreign students. So all international students must file a 1040 NR, which stands for non-resident, and Form 8843. Depending on your situation, other forms may have to be filed along with those for your taxes. Now, ISSS and SlugSense cannot give you tax advice. We are legally prohibited. However, SlugSense can help you find IRS guidelines on taxes and can help connect you to tax professionals that can advise you. We just cannot give tax advice. Now, as an international student here, you do have access to a service called Glacier Tax Prep, which is a tax preparation service that can help you with federal tax filing. And they do specifically work with international students. So they are very comfortable working with those sorts of taxes. Next slide, please. Now, you have to file a state tax return along with a federal tax return in many cases. If you have to file a federal return, which again, as a student here, you do, you also are required to file a California state tax return. Now, other states vary on that rule, but in California, if you have to file federal, you also have to file a state return. Some other rules that apply throughout the country normally is if you've worked in the US, you received a stipend, grant, or allowance, you expect a tax refund, or if your state refund for last year was over $436, you have to file state taxes. Now, as an international student, if you are here longer than a certain period of time, which I will talk about in a minute, you can qualify as a resident, and then those rules would apply because you would not then be held to the non-resident standard of having to file all of your tax forms. Now, there is a program in the area called VITA. VITA is a free program in the county where trained professionals prepare your taxes for free. And these volunteers are trained in non-resident tax preparation. They do have to pass exams to make sure that they are clear on how international student taxes are treated. So that is a free option for many students in the county. Now, when looking at graduate education, you may be wondering if your tuition remission is something that you have to worry about with your income taxes. Now, this is how the IRS views graduate education. A tuition reduction you receive for graduate education is qualified and therefore tax-free if it is provided by an educational institution, you are a graduate student, and you perform teaching or research activities. So if you're here at UCSC and you have a tuition remission as a GSR or TA, that tuition remission is not taxable and you do not have to worry about it when filling out your taxes. Next slide, please. So it can also be a bit confusing on how income taxes are calculated. You may have heard that income taxes are based on how much money you make, which is accurate, but there are some percentages involved, and it can be a little bit tricky to understand how much you truly have to pay in taxes. So normally how it works in the United States is the more money you make, the more tax you pay. If enough taxes are not withheld from your income, you are going to owe money when you file your taxes every year. If too much money is withheld for taxes, you will receive a refund. And I don't know if you remember, but I did say earlier, UCSC does automatically withhold money for taxes for you from your paycheck. So they do the math on their end. So it should match up to be just about enough for how much you owe for taxes. However, like I said, if they withhold too little, you may owe some money when you fill out your tax forms. If they withhold too much, you will get that extra back. Now, graduate fellowships, if you do have a fellowship, they also withhold income for taxes before being dispersed. And most international students with an F&J visa are considered non-resident for tax purposes. So what this means is that you'll have to fill out that 1040 NR. Now, you may be considered residents for tax purposes if you spend 5 years or more in the United States. Glacier Tax Prep is going to be the expert on that, and they can determine for you if you are a resident or non-resident for tax purposes. Next slide, please. So let's talk about budgeting your stipend and your expenses. Now, here's an example of a graduate student's budget, assuming that this student is a graduate student researcher, a GSR, and they have a full tuition remission, which will cover their non-resident tuition. Now, I took the minimum half-time salary of $2,583, and I took out 15% of the salary for taxes that UCSC withholds for you. This leaves about $2,200 a month that is paid to the student directly. Since taxes are taken out of your paycheck before you receive your money, you can budget using the income that you actually receive. We're also going to assume that this student in this example has saved $2,500 before school, and they are using it to pay their expenses at the beginning of the year since their GSR payments do not get paid to them until November 1st. Now, if this is the same case for you, you can use your savings at the beginning, and then you'll see at the bottom of the budget, this student does have money left over starting in November when they get paid, and you can use that money to build your savings back up. Now, overall, the student pays about $1,000 for rent and utilities. They budget $200 a month for food, $200 for fun and other expenses, and they also save some money for their books and supplies throughout the year. Now, they do in total earn more money than they spend. However, as you can see, before they get paid November 1st, they do actually owe more money than they have available. So this can be covered in a couple different ways. First, with student loans if need be. You can also work during the summer if you're not in class to be able to have a larger savings. And then, like I said, slug support can be helpful if you are in a situation like this and you have no way to cover your rent or other bills. Now, the rent here is based on a double room in a shared house with multiple roommates off campus. If you are going to live on campus, right now on-campus housing for grad students is $1,247 a month, but that does not include food. Now, I know this can be overwhelming for students. It can be hard to feel good about schooling when you have the weight that you cannot afford everything, especially in September and October. That is a common feeling, and we are here to support you. Like I said, Slug Support is a great program that we can connect you with if you are facing a similar situation as a student. Next slide, please. So since that was just an example, you're going to want to create a budget of your own. So here are some tips and guidelines on how to start your budget. First, budget from your take-home pay, and that is salary minus the taxes and other fees that are withheld from your paycheck. Now, depending on what you do after you leave UC Santa Cruz, if you stay in the United States, you may have other things taken out of your paycheck, like health insurance, retirement savings. Those are common. So just be aware of that for when you do graduate. But right now, it's mostly just taxes that get taken out. So what you can do, like I said, is just budget from the money that actually goes into your bank account. From there, there's a general guideline called the 50-30-20 budget. And what this is it says to split your spending down in these categories. 50% of your budget or 50% of your income goes to your must-haves. These are things like housing, food, transportation, medical expenses, things that you need to get by every single month. 30% of the budget goes to your wants, so dining out, clothes, if you're saving up for something like a trip. 20% goes to savings, which normally should be emergency savings or retirement savings, and debt repayment. However, when I say debt repayment, I'm talking about anything that is due right now. So if you do have student loans and they are not due right now, you do not have to include that in that 20%. Now, another guideline is that your housing should be less than 30% of your take-home pay. However, I will say in Santa Cruz, that is incredibly difficult. So that is not a rule you have to live by. It's just a guideline. And also, if you do have debt repayment should be less than 20% of your current income. So if you're thinking about buying a car or spending some money on a credit card, try and stay within that 20% of your income for your debt. Also, if you have the ability to, based on your income, it is recommended to save about 10 to 15% of your income. It's important to build up an emergency savings, and what this is a savings amount equal to 3 to 6 months of necessary expenses. This is in case something happens, like you have to leave school for some reason, or you have an emergency where you have to pay a large bill. People with pets may have expensive vet bills come up. Situations like that, and emergency savings can be really helpful so you don't feel stretched too thin when you have all your other monthly expenses on your plate. And a budget is just a plan for your money. So I know that this guideline may seem a bit overwhelming, but you can always start with the basics. You can use the breakdown like we did in the last slide, where you just look at your income and subtract your expenses. If you make more than you spend, you're doing great. If that number is negative and you're spending more than you make, that's where you can sit down with us or with Slug Support and figure out what needs to be done to help you close that financial gap. And keep in mind, you're not just budgeting for right now, you are also budgeting for your future self. Taking out of your savings now is going to make it harder for you to get by in the future. This is a financial flow over time. Your budget is over time, and your budget is not separate events. All of your expenses and your income is linked, so it's important to think of it like a flow, an ebb and flow, and not all separate purchases and separate sections. Next slide, please. Now, when creating a budget, there are a lot of different methods to make a budget. You can do this based on your personality, based on how you like to keep track of your situation. If you're a person who likes to write down notes and you use a calendar and a planner, you may want to make a budget on paper. If you like to do everything on Google Calendar or you don't like to think about it at all, you can set up automatic reminders and set up an automatic budget through tens of thousands of different apps that are available to you. Now, here are some methods that I like to recommend to students who are just starting out. First is the envelope method. And what this is, it's using all cash for your expenses. What you do is you get separate envelopes and you label them based on the categories that you decide you want to be in your budget. So normally that would be rent, maybe a category for dining out, maybe a category for transportation. Within each envelope, you put a certain amount of cash. That's your budget for your pay period. Once the envelope is out of cash, you should not be spending any more on that category. If there's any cash left in the envelope at the end of the period of time, then congrats, you did not spend your full budget and you can stick that extra in savings. There's also a website called You Need a Budget if you like something online. You Need a Budget is a free website for students. It is only free for the first year though, and then after that, fee for. Now, You Need a Budget directly with your banks and with all your credit cards and things like that. So what it does is it does a lot of the work for you. It can analyze your spending, create reports, and it has a really nice user interface, and it's really easy to use. There's also a lot of apps out there. Mint is one of them, and another is called Personal Capital. Now, Mint used to be very popular. However, I will say lately some banks have not been allowing Mint to connect to them. And so, Personal Capital is a newer app that does connect with the majority of banks and credit cards, things like that. So, depending on where your money is located, either of those might work for you, and both are free. There's also Excel. Now, Excel is online, but it is completely manual. You can't really link your bank accounts or anything, so you do have to type in all of your transactions. Now, SlugSense does have a student budget that is built on an Excel sheet, and it does do the math for you, but it can be time consuming to do things manually. So this would be great for the person who really likes to get in and look at every single thing that they do with their money and really dig deep. There's also a budget binder. So again, if you like to work with your hands, this is a great manual option. You can customize it on however you'd like it to look like. A lot of people with budget binders like to include a financial calendar where they get a calendar and write out when exactly they're getting paid and when certain bills come out. And you can also combine the budget binder and the envelope method. It really is very customizable. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about some resources in the area, since most of you are most likely really new to Santa Cruz. Now we do have a lot of great resources for basic needs. We have multiple food pantries on campus. Right now, only a couple of them are open because of the pandemic, but hopefully over time, more are going to open. As you can see, there is about 6 or 7 on campus. So we do have a lot of options if you are in need of food. Now, for the majority of these, there is no limit to how much food you can take, and all you need to do is show your student ID, and there's no questions asked. We also have our transportation department on campus, TAPS. TAPS provides the free buses on campus and also works with the Santa Cruz buses, the Metro, to give you a free bus pass to get around town. However, they also have other great programs like a bike lending program. If you live near campus or you would just like a bike to get around, they do offer free bike lending per quarter. And they also offer a zip car program. So if you'd like to rent a car to go to San Francisco or somewhere close by that you can get to by car, you can rent a zip car as a student, and it will be discounted compared to renting a car at a normal car rental company. And there are zip cars located on campus, so it can make it really easy to just get in the car and go. They also do another program that is a carpooling program. So if you live in Santa Cruz County, but not necessarily in Santa Cruz, there are carpools available that you can be a part of. And there is a fee for that. However, it is cheaper than getting your own car and driving yourself or using other methods of transportation. And then we do have slug support, like I already talked about. They are great if there are funding gaps and you have an emergent situation that you really need to pay for. We do have the community housing office on campus. They can help you with securing a rental off campus. They do have student packets to bring to landlords to help show that you are a student here and you would be a great tenant. And they also can help you learn how to avoid any scams in Santa Cruz County and other great tips around finding housing. We do have caps here. Being a grad student, you are balancing a lot with work and school and a social life, especially getting used to a new area like Santa Cruz. So caps can help you by providing therapy. There are on-campus therapists, but they also can recommend off-campus options. And they do have other services as well to deal with mental health. So they are a great resource. And I highly recommend if you are ever feeling like you want some help, to turn to them. There is the Disability Resource Center, so they can help with accommodations in class. Depending on your situation, if you need more time taking tests or more time to complete assignments or other accommodations, they are a great resource to go between you and your professors. We do have multiple resource centers on campus. So we have multiple ethnic resource centers, but we also have a women's center and a Cantu Queer Center. All of these resource centers provide great programming, and you do not have to identify as somebody in their community to be a part of their events and their programming. They do a lot of great events on knowledge around their community. So if you'd like to learn more about them, and they also do free food giveaways, toiletry pantries, things like that that can be really helpful for you. Now there is the ISSS. Of course, you have all the great people in global engagement, and there are so many great programs here for you as an international student to take advantage of and to learn more about what Santa Cruz can offer you. Now, as a grad student, you also are a part of the Graduate Student Association. Now, they do a lot of great things for graduate students in terms of policy making between UCSC and grad students. And right now, they are fighting to help increase graduate student stipends since living in Santa Cruz is incredibly expensive and most graduate students do have issues surviving here because it is really hard and you may not always be paid enough to feel comfortable. And then, of course, you have Student Business Services and SlugSense. So Student Business Services is the billing office on campus. So we can help you if you have questions related to paying your bill, if something happens with your tuition remission and you have questions, we are the people to go to. SlugSense provides financial coaching. So if you have questions on taxes or budgeting or credit cards or any sort of personal finance topic like that, we do have financial coaches here to help you. You can meet one-on-one with them. We also host events monthly. We normally have workshops right now. They are pretty much all through Zoom right now on a lot of different topics. And then we have other online resources. So we have a resource list of on and off campus. We have a financial calendar, financial calculators, and general financial education to get you started. Now, there are some more resources that I don't have listed here. A couple that I do want to touch on real quick is the library. So the library has more than just books. They do have music, DVDs, they have video games. They also have, I believe, a podcast studio now, and they also rent out film equipment. So if you're interested in anything like that, they are a great resource. And we also have ITS on campus, and ITS is our information technology services. So they help a lot of students if you have any computer issues, but they do also offer free software for students. So you do have access to Adobe for free, which includes your Photoshop and other Adobe tools that are great for students who like to be creative. And ITS also partners with Slug Support to offer a laptop program. So if you need a laptop and cannot afford one, you can reach out to Slug Support, and them and ITS have partnered together to provide laptops for students who need them. So those are some great resources on campus. Next slide, please. So we also have resources off campus. Now there are some online resources first. Honey is a great one that does automatic cashback and coupons. This is a browser extension, so you can add this to Google Chrome. And if you are purchasing something online, it will automatically apply coupons for you. And if it cannot find coupons, it will normally give you cash back, which is always nice. Then there's two student discount sites, Student Beans and Unidays. And for these, you normally just have to input your student email. You may have to provide a picture of your student ID or a transcript just to show that you're currently enrolled. And then after that, you get access to thousands of student discounts on stuff that you probably use every day. They have the Apple discount, Spotify, the Hulu discount, they have technology, clothes, they have entertainment discounts, they have all kinds of things. So it's great to just look and see if anything you're planning to buy, you can get a discount for. There is also Student Universe for travel discounts. So what this is it's kind of like an Expedia sort of site. However, it is specifically for students or people who are affiliated with the university. So again, you just use your student email and then you will get discounted flights, hotels, and rental cars shown to you. Now, I personally have used Student Universe as a student, so I can say that it did work. It did save me $100 when I used it, which was great. However, I do want to caution that this is a third-party travel agency. So what this means is since you're not purchasing directly from the airline or hotel, cancellation or changing your plans can be very difficult. So always be sure to try and read the fine print and make sure that you know your travel plans so you don't have to deal with any of the headache that can come with changing your plans. Now, in the Santa Cruz community, we do have some basic needs options. First is a Salvation Army Farmers Market. So we do have multiple farmers markets in town where you can get a lot of fresh local food. However, the Salvation Army has their own sort of farmers market where they offer very low cost food. Then we also have the community food hotline. So if you aren't sure where your next meal is coming from, you can call this phone number on the screen and they will be able to connect you with any food pantries in the area. They will be able to connect you with low or no cost options. And they can also, if needed, connect you with a case manager or anything of that sort to help make sure that you are getting what you need. In town, there is a place called the Walnut Avenue Women's Center, which can help with shelter, food, and clothing. And they are not necessarily just for women. They also do have healthcare and other connections. So if you need something, they are a safe place to go. And then finally, we do have Facebook groups here for Santa Cruz. The big one is the Santa Cruz buy and sell page. So people, including a lot of UCSC students, will post clothes, furniture, technology, all sorts of things for sale in the area. And you can also sell your own things if you want to make some cash. And then there's the housing page. So if you're looking for an off-campus apartment, the Santa Cruz housing page on Facebook has thousands of people in the area. I see new apartments for rent every single day. And you can also post that you're looking for housing and be connected to possible roommates and possible housing options. So that is a great way to stay updated on the rental market in Santa Cruz. Next slide, please. So talked about expenses, talked about your income. There may be times where you may need to stretch the money that you have available to you. So here's a few recommendations. First, try and find some free entertainment. In normal times, Santa Cruz and UCSC offer so many festivals, events, and opportunities to have a great time for free. We are slowly getting back to that. More and more events are popping up in person, so hopefully you'll get to experience some of that as a grad student here. While that can be a bit harder to find right now, you do have other options outside of these events. So first, the library. UCSC is a great one, like I said, but we also have the Santa Cruz Library. And the Santa Cruz Library also has ebooks and movies and games and more. But the Santa Cruz Library also has an additional program called the Go program, where you can sign up and receive discounted or free passes to museums and other cultural centers. So that can be a really great way to spend a weekend without spending a lot of your money. You can also learn a new skill. Now, as a student, you do have access to sites like LinkedIn Learning, but you can also use sites like Udemy, Coursera, and Skillshare, where you can find low or no cost courses on basically any topic that you are interested in. So things like pottery, technology, anything that you can think of, there's probably a course on it. Now, if you'd like to, you can head out into nature. Santa Cruz has so many beaches and forests that are free to explore. We have multiple state parks. There's a national park close by. We have, I want to say, almost 30 beaches within the county. There are a lot of options. Now, I will say that some of the parks and beaches may charge for parking. However, depending on where you go, normally there is a spot for free parking right outside the park. You may have to walk a little bit, but especially at the state parks, parking is $10, so you can save your cash and just walk a little bit. It's really helpful. Also, there are a lot of clubs on campus, and UCSC colleges put on events, and there's programs all over campus, especially virtual right now. There's virtual game nights, virtual movie nights. I've seen virtual trivia from the different colleges. So even if you aren't affiliated with the college, you are normally more than welcome to join in and enjoy the fun. Also, if you have subscription services, now is a great time as you are getting used to UCSC to meet new friends and see if you can share any subscriptions. If one person has Hulu and the other has Netflix or Amazon Prime, instead of each one of you paying for all of them, try and share a little bit. And then, like I said, TAPS has some great programs for low or no cost transportation, that bike lending, Zipcar, and then the partnership with the Metro. Most students do not need a car here. So those are great options. If you aren't sure what you need, try those out first and see if you can save yourself some money by not bringing a car. And then finally, we have so many food pantries on and off campus. Please feel comfortable taking advantage of them. They are there to be used and to help you manage your limited budget, and anyone is welcome to use their resources. Just because you may have a small budget for food does not mean that you can't go to a food pantry. They are for anyone, so don't feel like you are taking away anything from anyone else. It's very common to feel that way if you've never been to a food pantry before. And I just want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable knowing that this is for you, especially the ones on campus are for all students, and it can save you a lot of money to use the food pantries. So next slide, please. Finally, I just want to say it is okay to feel overwhelmed or frustrated. You have a lot going on in your life, balancing school and work. You might be doing additional research on top of the work that you get paid for. You also have to worry about your mental health and having a social life, and that can be so difficult and overwhelming and tiring, especially during the pandemic. I just want to make sure that you all know that you do not have to do this alone. There are so many programs on campus and off campus to help support you, and we all want you to succeed, and we all want the best for you. So if you ever need help, we are there for you as a community, and we want you to feel comfortable here. Next slide, please. So with that, thank you for having me and thank you for joining us. If you have more questions about student business services and Slug Sense, you can visit us online. And our social media is also on the page. Like I said, we do events monthly, so you can feel free to follow us to stay up to date on everything that we offer. And with that, thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria. I'm going to stop the recording and see if there are any questions.